help get them elected because they're fighting to become part of the team. So I remember specifically when Mike Lawler came in, and he was welcomed in by everybody. I mean, he was propped up as the guy we have to fight for, one of the most critical races as an incoming Republican candidate, because it was a very close district. And it was so important. We were told it was so important to win this district. Well, I learned a lot about him very quickly. He, as a Catholic, Mike Lawler is a Catholic, was heavily supported and funded by the Jewish community there, and was heavily being supported by all the Christian Zionists. And he instantly had more support from pretty much every fundraising mechanism that there is in Washington, D.C. that supports Republicans. He had more help than I could have ever dreamed of having, ever
What
in my
happens when
entire...
a political conversation suddenly stops sounding like strategy and starts sounding like betrayal? In this striking exchange, Marjorie Taylor Greene uses one of the harshest phrases possible about Donald Trump: bought and paid for. And with that, the tone changes instantly. Because this is no longer just about one leader, one party, or one headline. It becomes a deeper question about power itself. Who really shapes political decisions? And what happens when even loyal voices begin to suggest that influence is coming from somewhere the public cannot fully see? In a few blunt words, this clip turns into something much bigger than an opinion. It feels like a warning.
So Mike Lawler is and Don Bacon is another name you mentioned a minute ago, but is kind of a metaphor for the corruption in the system, it would seem to me. So Mike Lawler obviously is way out there on pointless wars, neocon politics, loyalty to Israel, almost to a cartoonish point.
Yeah.
But he's also leading the charge on every other anti-human initiative that comes out of the United States Congress. Anything that's bad for the public, he's for. Anything that might help the public, he ignores. Like, what is that? What is his motive? Do you understand?
I'll go back to when he was a candidate for Congress. I was already serving in the House. And in our conference meetings, in our GOP conference meetings, the ones that we have at the Capitol Hill, we have two different type of conference meetings. Each week, there's one meeting a week. And it's kind of sad that your Republican representatives only meet one time a week, but once a week. And one is either political, and that one happens inside the Capitol. And then there's another kind that's completely and totally campaign and fundraising related. That one happens off campus at the Capitol Hill Club. And they bring in candidates. They'll bring in, any new candidate running for Congress that, of course, is only approved by the NRCC and approved by the traditional establishment Republican Party in Washington. So they will bring in these candidates into this GOP meeting. They'll have them stand up, raise their hand, introduce themselves. The speaker or the leader, whoever is talking, will praise them and explain to everyone in the room why they've got to write them a max check immediately and help get them elected because they're fighting to become part of the team. So I remember specifically when Mike Lawler came in, and he was welcomed in by everybody. I mean, he was propped up as the guy we have to fight for, one of the most critical races as an incoming Republican candidate, because it was a very close district. And it was so important. We were told it was so important to win this district. Well, I learned a lot about him very quickly. He, as a Catholic, Mike Lawler is a Catholic, was heavily supported and funded by the Jewish community there, and was heavily being supported by all the Christian Zionists. And he instantly had more support from pretty much every fundraising mechanism that there is in Washington, D.C. that supports Republicans. He had more help than I could have ever dreamed of having, ever in my entire political career. And I was like, wow, what is going on with this guy? And it turns out he did win his race. It was a narrow victory, but he did win it. And of course, he instantly came into the House of Representatives completely bought and paid for by all of the establishment donor class that had supported him. He hated Donald Trump, made fun of him constantly, mimicked him, making fun of his voice, he used to attack me, make fun of me, come and find me on the House floor and make fun of me for supporting Donald Trump. And this was in the 4 years before Trump got elected as president again in 2024. And I was just like, this guy's like literally one of the worst. Well, I would say he's the worst, but Randy Fine is really the worst. But Mike Lawler was unbelievably, I thought he was a Democrat. I was like, he's literally a Democrat. He's so against all the things that Republican voters care about. And he clearly hates Donald Trump. Well, I saw this unbelievable change in him. And of course, it happened after Trump won his primary in 2024. All of a sudden, Mike Lawler, I started joking. I started calling him MAGA Mike Lawler because he was all of a sudden like becoming Trump's biggest supporter. And he was all excited. He got a MAGA hat signed by Donald Trump, came straight up to me to show it to me. And I'll never forget the day that he had gone and met with the president at the White House. Of course, I was not invited. Only all the Republicans that hated the president before. Let me tell you, Tucker, it all changed. When Trump went in the White House, literally in a matter of months, those of us that fought for him when no one else would, who were basically like the inner circle, we all of a sudden got kicked out. And it was the Republicans like Mike Lawler and all these other guys that were the ones being constantly ushered into the White House for meetings and all kinds of things. So he came back on the House floor one day and he had one of Trump's gigantic challenge coins that's like big and gold and obnoxious and heavy. And he came up and he was like, I've got one of these, Marjorie. Do you have one of these? And he was all bragging about it. But you know what that told me, Tucker, is what I really reflecting on it now that I didn't really realize at that time was that the president not only was Mike Lawler fully bought and paid for by this and Don Bacon and all these other guys, fully bought and paid for by the political industrial complex that maintains the power structure in Washington that is completely America last. But the fact that they were the ones now first on the list to go to the White House and the ones being courted all the time, that meant that's when the president also became bought and paid for by the exact same group of people, powerful donor class, and the powerful industries.
So the reason Mike Lawler was unusual even in the Congress was he was such a slavish servant of Israel. Mm-hmm. From his very first public statements, everything was about Israel. He comes from a district with a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. I didn't read a single solution to any of those problems he was proposing, but it was always about Israel. Would you say that the group that hated Trump and then early in the term got invitations to the White House, were they all servants of Israel?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Are you kidding me? Tucker, when I introduced an amendment to defund Israel just last year, it hasn't even been a year yet. Only 5 other members of Congress, 5 out of 435, only 5 voted with me to defund American taxpayer dollars going to Israel. So that's your count. If you want to know how many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle are completely beholden to funding Israel, no matter what they do, no matter how much genocide they commit, no matter how many Lebanon Christian villages they destroy, no matter which country they decide to bomb out of their madness and desire for destruction, it was only 5. It's total 6 of us. There were 6 of us, including myself. That's your count.
I assume Massie was one of those.
Of course, Thomas Massie was one. Of course. Yeah. He's not bought and paid for, which is why his race is the most important race that has to be won. None of the other ones really matter.
I don't want to get too sidetracked, but since you mentioned his race, where is that race now?
It is tightened. He's still in the lead, but it's definitely tightened. I've seen different polling. It's got him anywhere of approximately 5 to 7 points ahead of this guy named Ed Galrin, who, by the way, Ed Galrin won't even show up to debate Thomas Massie. Like it's like campaign 101. If you're running for Congress, you should be able to show up to a debate in your district in front of the people that you're wanting to vote for you. And you should be able to show up in person and stand in front of a microphone and a camera against your opponent and address why you will be a better representative than the current representative, Thomas Massie. And Ed Galbraith has not shown up to a single one. As far as my knowledge, he hasn't shown up at all. And by the way, he's completely funded by 3 Zionist billionaires, 100% funded, that have given tens of millions of dollars, and they don't even live in his district. They couldn't relate to Kentucky. That they only know about Tel Aviv. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen happen. And Chris LaCivita is the guy that's running the race because Chris LaCivita, who does he work for? Lindsey Graham, John Cornyn, some of the worst Republicans. And he's doing everything he can, aligning himself with these 3 Zionist billionaires to defeat Thomas Massie.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.
By the end of this clip, what lingers is not just the shock of one phrase, but the deeper unease it creates. Bought and paid for is not ordinary political criticism. It is the language of disillusionment. It suggests that power may no longer belong to the image the public sees on stage, but to the forces that stand behind the curtain. Money, pressure, alliances, expectations, and the invisible calculations that shape what leaders say and what they refuse to say. And that is why this moment matters. Because when a statement like this is spoken out loud in a conversation that viewers expect to be familiar, ideological, even comfortable, it breaks the rhythm. It forces the audience to stop consuming politics as performance and start looking at it as structure. Who influences the people who claim to speak for the movement? Who benefits when strong public language hides softer private compromises? And how much of modern politics is really conviction versus negotiation with power? That is where this clip becomes documentary material. It stops being just a quote and starts becoming a case study in how political trust begins to crack. The real tension here is not only whether the accusation is fair. The real tension is that once words like these are spoken, they cannot be unheard. They create suspicion. They invite re-examination. They force viewers to go back through speeches, policy shifts, alliances, and moments of silence, asking whether the public story was ever the full story at all. And that is exactly what keeps people watching. Not outrage by itself, but the feeling that they may be witnessing a fracture from inside the house, not an attack from outside it. In that sense, the clip works because it is emotionally loaded but structurally simple. One line, one conversation, one unsettling implication. If even insiders can sound this alarm, then viewers are left wondering whether the political brand they thought they understood is being quietly reshaped by forces they were never meant to track. And that is the strongest ending for a video like this. Not a neat conclusion, not a forced verdict, but an unresolved tension that follows the audience after the screen goes dark. Because the most powerful political moments are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are the moments that make people question who is really in control. And once that question enters the room, it changes everything. So as this conversation closes, the issue is no longer just what was said about Trump. The deeper issue is why a phrase this blunt had to be said at all, and what it reveals about the pressure, the loyalty tests, and the hidden influence that may be shaping the future of a movement in real time. If that question stays with the viewer, the video has done exactly what great retention-driven commentary should do. It has turned a clip into a mystery, a statement into a warning, and a political soundbite into a reason to keep watching until the very last second.